and welcome back to the Connected Packaging Summit. I'm Jenny Stanley, founder and managing director at Appetite Creative, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you back to the Connected Packaging Summit. Yesterday, we learned about how to start with connected packaging, and we had Vita from TTE Strategy, how Tetra Pak and Griner Packaging are using connected packaging to benefit their brands, and how to be more innovative in our daily lives, plus some great case studies thrown in throughout. All sessions will be recorded, so if you missed any of yesterday's, don't panic. They will be ready next week and you'll be able to view them on our YouTube channel. So now to today, welcome again. We are at day 2 of our two-day summit, and what a fantastic agenda there is planned for today. We have 4 different yet equally interesting sessions planned for you all, centering around this hugely trending topic right now of sustainability. According to a recent study from April this year, shoppers demand sustainable retail, and the vast majority of Generation Z shoppers prefer to buy sustainable brands. And shoppers in general are willing to spend up to 10% more on sustainable products. So why and how can companies get involved? And what has connected or smart packaging got to do with it anyway? The next session is an interactive one, so please do feel free to ask your questions in the box below, and we will get through them throughout the session. So let's get started. I would like to welcome to our virtual stage, Pete Durant, CSR and sustainable consultant and public speaker, and we will be talking about how to communicate your sustainable CSR messaging in an interactive way. Hi Pete, welcome to you. Welcome to our virtual stage.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to have the video so you can see me, but
yes, in suspense.
Yeah, might be better if you don't.
Well, while you work that out, I'll also want to ask you a quick question. Yesterday, we were asking all of our panelists to help us to get to know them a little better by revealing a fact that not many people know about you. Can you help us with something, a top secret that you can share?
Oh God. No. I'm trying to think. I was once on the MTV presenter search, VJ presenter search in 2004. And I was in a top 10 being voted to be the next one. And I cruelly was not the one. Otherwise, you probably would know about me.
So a small claim to fame. Thank you, Pete.
Small claim to fame. There you go. From 17 odd years ago now.
Luckily you didn't make it, because here you are with us today. So we're here to talk about innovative solutions, particularly connected packaging, and also how the increasing popularity of technology and tech initiatives have been influencing the world of sustainability. Is there anything that you've seen in particular recently that's caught your eye?
I think for me, the thing that really has caught my eye has been the real growth and kind of explosion of new brands that actually has sustainability or impact positive or carbon neutral or clearing up plastic from the seas, so on and so forth, really at the heart of their business. And actually that is the core thing that they offer, and it's really truly integrated and been motivated and driven by those things, and rather than brands who are kind of further down the line. And I think that growth of really integrated messaging has been really interesting, and almost not forcing, but be showing brands that there are different ways that you can kind of approach it. I think that for me, from a just from a sort of technology standpoint, especially within fashion and places like that, has been the real growth of those businesses who are really particular and been motivated and driven by those things. Probably obviously also set up by a different generation who are actively wanting to make a difference in that space and seeing business and doing good, or being inspired by being positive on the planet, being a reason to start a business rather than the other way around.
Yeah, and I think there's so many new businesses now coming out which are looking at upcycling, recycling, sustainability. Do you think that's been fueled by the pandemic as well? Do you see a change because of that?
No, I think the pandemic it depends on how far and where you want to go down the sustainability route, or the climate route, or the way we look after and treat animals, and in terms of where potential diseases come from and things like that. But I think that the climate change and having more sustainable lifestyle would have been on the same trajectory regardless of the pandemic. I think that's a separate kind of arc of story and the way that we're approaching it.
Fair enough, fair enough. As one of the best ways to avoid plastic and paper production and waste, do you see technology being best friends to sustainability strategists? Do you see that the way forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that the one watch I would say to anyone who's a sustainability strategist, or you're looking at your impact of your business and you're going to use any technology, whether that is packaging or likewise, is you have to look at the kind of supply chain, and you have to make sure that whatever that you're currently doing using technology can outweigh that. So it's just a kind of watch out to say that, you know, you could be using recycled bamboo business cards, just a separate, really kind of random example, and you say this is much better than paper and kind of having that impact, but then it could be being made by a factory that's really bad that you don't see, and being delivered and ferried across the world, and actually what is the product itself is really good, the way it gets to you isn't. So I think the one thing with technology is also, you know, how you power the servers and things like that. I think the idea of technology is about it's enabling a behavior. It's empowering someone in that situation to have a relationship with you, or for you to pass your message on, or whatever that might be. So that technology is also, this is the irony of the packaging part, is that it's invisible and it's mixed in. And obviously I don't mean packaging is invisible, but the technology is such an enabler of it. So can it be a best friend? Yes. Is it in your group of friends, you know, your toolkit? Absolutely. But you just got to make sure that the impact of that tech solution is the watch out. But I think ultimately, when looking at particularly connected packaging and looking at, you know, the increasing popularity of tech, is that we all, if you're in marketing and comms, you're trying to tell your story. Right place, right time to the right person, people. But at the same time, we're also challenged at selling products. And that sometimes is a completely different focus of messaging. Okay, if you're a business where it's completely integrated, and so there's a fashion brand called Save Our Seas, right? Or you know, that's a really clear message that's integrated in what you're doing. But if you haven't been on that journey and it's not kind of in the name of your business, you might have to talk about fashion messaging, or you might need to talk about product messaging in terms of the use, or there's an offer. And what I think technology really allows us, and especially with connected packaging and that sort of technology, is it allows us to create smarter and better narrative hierarchies, so that we can actually go through our audiences and understand what message should go where. And technology then allows you to be more nuanced, be smarter, and hit you in different area, kind of almost like a freedom that allows you to hit sweet spots to tell that story. So if we take that fashion one as a kind of another example, those who have it front and center and it's integrated, you might be able to say, right, we can use connected packaging. People have already engaged with our story, but actually if it's, say, something that you can scan on your jumper or whatever it might be that you've bought, that allows someone to become an advocate. And that allows someone to be able to, when they can't remember the link to a video, to show their friends by scanning just the ticket or label within their packaging. So it allows you then to think about, well, that's advocates, so I can really drive that side of things. If they've come through as secondary and maybe not quite so engaged with the message, thus there is another way for you to do it. There's another platform for you to say, if you are interested, here it is. All you've got to do is use your phone or do this. I mean, it's quite a crude example there, but I'm just trying to say is that I think the biggest thing that technology will allow us to do, or does allow us to do, is to look at those hierarchies of story that you're telling, understanding how you mix it, and it enables you then to say, oh, I haven't quite done this or this or this. How can I use technology to enable me to do it?
Yeah, no, I like what you say there about the fashion. So you know the shirt that you're wearing or whatever could have a QR code on that, and therefore you could very easily say to somebody, I bought this one because XYZ, scan this code and find, you know, and find out more, whatever. So you're almost kind of turning then your consumers into your advocates, who are then proud of what they've purchased and able then to share that to new audiences, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about everyone who buys your product, that's a marketer you've created for your brand. So, you know, so it's thinking about how you can integrate that, how you can use technology to allow them to then take your message further and to be able to do that. So, and that's, I mean, I know you're going to ask me a question later, so I don't want to give away my answer to this, but it's if you think about it, if you're selling a physical product, and within that packaging, whether that's a milk carton, a t-shirt, whatever, you're essentially creating your own little media channel. And anything can then go into that media channel. So it could be anything. It could be further engagement. It could be you giving something for the kids to learn about sustainability. It could be this, it could be that. But what you essentially got, you've got something that you own and control, and you have a captive audience who probably will, if you point them towards it, do it at least once. And then obviously people might use it more in those situations. So it's actually an incredibly powerful platform that you are creating, in the same way that if you send a package out, you might put an insert, right? But the difference is that if it's more integrated into the product or the packaging, things like that, people aren't automatically going to throw that away. And especially if you're in store, you're buying this from a shop and you're buying a milk carton, right? Crude example, that is going to be in your fridge for 3 days, 5 days, whatever. I drink plant-based milk, so
Depends how many copies you have.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm plant-based, so it will last longer. But you know, that's there, and that's always there as kind of, as I said, a media channel for you. So whereas if you do inserts, I don't know about you, just personal experience, you might have a quick squeeze, but that's kind of out of the way, and you're really looking and wanting to get to the product itself. So, and you're not going to get rid of that out of the product for however long the lifespan is. So I think there's a really interesting mentality switch of my product itself potentially is a media channel for me, especially when you're trying to tell stories that you don't always necessarily want to lead with because of, as we said, you might be doing a sales message, you might be able to do in a product message, not necessarily a provenance message.
And also you've got the ability to join both of those things, because of course once you open that gateway, you could actually have some sales messaging here, some sustainability messaging here, some videos about this particular thing, a new initiative coming in, you know, so actually you can kind of have multiple messaging then.
Yeah, it's whatever you want to use it for, basically, you know, and that's what, you know, if you're just looking at the CSR element of it, the good element, it does allow you a great space to kind of those people who haven't engaged with that kind of messaging to push that, if that's what you choose to do. But essentially, you're right, it's your media channel, it's your platform, you can use it for whatever.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I think for now, let's move to an interactive poll. While we do that, Pete, you have the chance to quickly log off and log back on, see if we get your video running. To everybody else, we've got the interactive poll. So the question is, knowing that people in a recent survey from April said that they would be willing to pay more, here's a question to you. Have you ever purchased a product purely because of its values, regardless if it costed just that little bit more? So while you think about that, and hopefully Pete comes back to show us his face, we will have a look at how we're doing here. So interestingly, we're looking at a few times. We've got some nevers. We haven't got all, we have got an always. We'll give it a quick 5 seconds countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we can see that we have a few times. So 82% of us actually would, depending, I suppose, on the messaging and the price increase, but certainly consider and purchase something purely because of its values, regardless of its cost. So again, that is very in line with the recent survey. So really interesting there, Pete. I see we're not going to get to see your face, but what do you think of that? Have you purchased something just because of its values rather than the cost?
Absolutely. It says that, it just says the host has not enabled my video or stopped my video, which must be because you saw my face beforehand. So you might be doing a break. I think, yes, 100% I do, but that's because my wife and I, we have particular values and things that we kind of live by. And an example would be who gives a crap toilet paper. We get the premium bamboo because we know that's much better for the planet, plus a percentage of profits go to creating toilets across developing countries. So for me, that kind of really, hey, here I am. There we go. I told you it was a massive disappointment in waiting. But yeah, so with Who Gives a Crap, we do that because actually the product is incredible. It does cost a little bit more than you would do if you're buying a kind of regular paper one. But not only does percentage of profits go to someone, we also it's better for the planet because of the bamboo element of it. So and it looks really good, and the product is really good as well. And I think that's actually a really key point on that, is that no matter what the message is around the sustainability or the product or anything like that, the most important thing is that the product is good. That's why we buy products. That's why we want them and we get them. So otherwise we'd all be wearing hemp sacks and that's it. So so I think that's always the thing to kind of remember. And that's key really, is your product any good?
Definitely.
I think people will pay for great products.
Yeah, and then the cherry on the cake, no? We've got a question in. It's a long one. So Pete, more regarding CSR, a couple of years ago, a famous brand of baby wipes launched a campaign in which they announced they would donate €1 to needed children for each share on social media. That created a huge controversy, with people saying that charity shouldn't depend on shares and social media engagement. What is your opinion regarding this type of campaign, and how should brands communicate these campaigns?
Yeah, it shouldn't. And I think that, so when I worked at Comic Relief, we worked with a lot of partners who actually were really vetted incredibly end to end to ensure that they matched the values of the charity that they were supporting. And most of those businesses didn't use those tactics for precisely the reason for what the person shared there in the question, which is, it's not about just saying we're going to support this charity today and tomorrow we're not going to care. And I think this is around communicating your business and how you differentiate yourself and your intentions, is that there's a lot of broad washing of good, and using measures like this that are very short-termist and very shallow. I think what's really important is the commitment that as a business you're going on, and the transparency of that journey that you're going on, because no one can just flip a switch and then suddenly everything is perfect.
No.
But it's about saying we are committed to this, we are doing this, and actually taking people on a journey in order to do that, to say we're going to do, we're trying to achieve this goal. 2 months down the line, this is where we've got to. This is where we've got to. We haven't quite done this yet. And being really open and transparent with people about the progress and about what you haven't hit. and what you haven't done. Because I think people will really respect that, because it's a very human approach to doing it, rather than just, we're just going to give a bit of cash to charity. But apart from that, we don't really care because we're using a sweatshop. Right? It's because, but that's kind of what people will, I mean, it's got, again, quite a crude, blunt example, but it's that sort of thing to say, oh, you're doing that, but why don't you just give 1% of your profit away for a year, rather than putting it around shares and likes? It's kind of, it's the wrong end of the communications. It's almost like we need someone to talk about and share about how amazing we are, when the reality is probably not. And that's also not really why you should be using it, doing it. That's not the right way to comms it, to try and say, we want to feel better about ourselves, because that's where the human element, it feels really uneasy and not right. It's about doing the work down the other end, making sure that you're really clear about what you're doing, and then being able to bubble it up. So, I think lots of the brands that we work with, they didn't do that, but they were doing profit shares. They were doing pennies per pack. They were doing match funding. So, actually, if people raise it, then we will come along and we will give 5 times that. So, and things like that, which are, people do it because they want to sell more product. Let's be really crude about it. Or they do it because they actually care and they want to push it. But anytime that you put your head above the parapet, you need to ensure that the back stuff is done, that you're really committed and you're taking people through that journey. And shares, that's really disingenuous. That's people go, you're just doing it for yourselves, rather than saying to us, we're doing this and we want to tell you about why we're doing it. We want to tell you about why this is important to us and why we think it's important to you, and all of that sort of stuff. So it's kind of, I think that's kind of the comms bit is really important. I think the other way of looking at it from a comms thing, which is like greenwashing is a big problem, is around, a lot of the time now your stories are not being told by you. You aren't really in control of what you're saying, and it's much more of a democratic world that we live in. So it's also looking at not just doing the shares thing. Again, why are you doing that? Why do you need shares? Like, what is it actually driving for your business goals? But actually saying, how do others carry our message? So it's not just let's get a load of influencers, but who customers, as we mentioned before, how are they carrying messaging? How are they telling their friends excuse me, about what they're doing? The press, your press campaign, how are the press talking about what you're doing? Yes, influencers and people that you think should know about your messaging do that. So that messaging again would be far stronger than people just doing a share thing. So I think it's about why you're doing it, and being able, if you're in a comms team and being given that kind of challenge, to kind of just dial it back a bit and say, actually, what's a better way of doing this?
That kind of feeds into the next question that somebody sent in as well, which is, how can companies avoid sounding too braggy when communicating their sustainability and CSR commitments? They ask, is that a risk? I mean, obviously it's a risk, I'd say, no?
100%, but I think it comes back to what I said around that journey, the transparency and the human thing is, if you're doing it to be braggy, like, who wants to be with that brand anyway? How many brands do you associate or buy products with because they've got a braggy brand? No one really. And really that just goes back to branding and how you tell your business story. So take the worthy element out of it, or the good element, and you're saying to yourself, what type of brand are we? In your brand values, is the word braggy in that? No. If the word is, and if you're looking at it as a human, probably not going to make friends with that human. You're not going to want to keep interacting. So I think tone of voice is hugely important, but it's also, that's what I said, it's about the human, it's about the journey. So it's not saying, look at all the amazing stuff we're doing, aren't we great? It's saying, we're making a commitment to do this. We're doing it because this is important. This is why. Come on a journey with us. Come and find out what we're doing, rather than going, we're amazing. Look, we saved 12 children last year. Aren't we great? because actually you can pick apart their process. So it's just that kind of flip of progression, commitment, being really human and not being perfect, and taking people through that. Then the other thing as well is just really important when you're comsing it is simplifying it, and also using data at the same time, which is kind of confusing, which is where messaging hierarchies are so important. Because some people, the reality is they just want to see a line. They want one sentence, and that's all they need, that reaffirms what they want or know about your brand or want to know to make that purchase. Other people want to have a 12-page PDF, or wanting to know every little bit about your production, the wind turbine, the battery you're using on that renewable energy. They want that level of detail. So I think it's being able to take it back and saying, can we simplify it? Again, messaging hierarchy, what's our one line? How do we then make it longer and longer so that people are unable to go that further? But if they only want a little bit at the top, that's what they get. And I think that's kind of the kind of key to it. And it's making sure you're positioning it not as a braggy thing, but as a journey of commitment and why you care. Because then it's not braggy, because you're showing people the impact that they're having and you're having.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I suppose it's about being genuine, making sure you honestly do care about what you're saying, and then think about your tone of voice and the way that you're going to involve your consumers in that and interact with them. What's holding back? Obviously, there's probably a fear about being braggy, but what else do you think is holding back more companies looking at carbon neutral or other sustainable initiatives?
I think broadly there's four things. The first is knowledge. I was speaking to an ex-colleague of mine and friend, and she had just done a big training around sustainable business, and she came out of it incredibly excited. She said something which was really, really stuck with me. She said it's like digital marketing was 15 years ago, and that was something new that was coming along. That was now is just a part of life, and because of that, we're still really at the starter stage. So knowledge, I think, is a really important thing, and finding the right people to help people down that process, because sustainability itself is such a broad term. The solution in energy is going to be really different to the solution in fashion, to the solution in food, to the solution and so on and so forth. So actually, it's broad, but yeah, it's so specialist at the same time. So I think that's a challenge. So I think it's that knowledge of how you get started and doing that bit, and then kind of educating people to go along that kind of skill. And I feel like, even now, if you look at social and digital, people still get confused, or people are not quite embraced with it. But I still think that's on a journey, just like this is. The second part is around the size of the challenge. And I think sometimes that can be overwhelming, and it can drive people to inaction. I think that is a genuine problem with some people, because also, if you really look at it, there are some businesses. So if we look at, say, BAM Clothing, which is a company local to me here in Plymouth, which is actually an impact positive. So they're not just about neutral, they're not just about sustainability, they're about putting more in than they're taking out and having a positive impact on people and the planet. So when you look at that as a business trying to make a change, it's quite overwhelming. So I think it's trying to help businesses really drill down and simplify it to enable them to have goals to hit, to move in the right direction. The third thing is speed and structures. If anyone who's worked in a big or a legacy organization, there's lots and lots of structures and processes. So things will always be slower. So I think time and change and things like that are difficult. And especially if you're going to change to a new supplier, that could be a year-long process to change your supply chain, or it could be a 2-year, a 3-year, or 4 years. So I think time is a big challenge. And then it's, do you have the energy and momentum to continue to make those changes to do that? I think also within those structures, a lot of good is focused into one or two people, rather than it being across the business. And that goes back around to the knowledge and really empowering everyone and putting that as a part of it. And anyone who's done a brand reformat or changed brand values and try and integrate that across a big organization, and that's just with branding, right? It's really difficult to then get people onto it. So I think so speed and structure, I think, is a challenge to people. But again, it links to the size of the challenge, it links to knowledge. And then the last thing is personal viewpoints. People, right? As much as we think that everyone cares, not everyone does. And especially at the very top level. I've seen directors who really want to make a difference, but they've been given a budget that stops them from being able to make right decisions or green decisions or sustainable decisions. And I think a lot of businesses are, because of the word business necessarily, but there are people who want to make 10 million rather than being happy with 8 million. If they make that change, even if they're going to make that difference down the line. And it's just not a priority to them. So I think, so I still think there's a lot of viewpoints at the very top, perhaps, who aren't engaging. And that's the difference when I said about those amazing new businesses who are very small, the difference between their motivations and their value base, and things like that. So I think it's kind of, those four things are kind of a perfect storm of interlinked issues. But I think, you know, really it's knowledge and size of challenge of being able to break that down to make small steps, because if you change half of what you do, that's incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And perhaps breaking it into small pieces and not, you know, not trying to take on a whole rebrand or revalue set in one go. So maybe trying to like break it down into small things first. And
it's the same if you look at other things as well. If you're going to start to look at mental health, or you're going to look at your diversity policy, you're going to look at all other things, you know, broadly under values. You know, it is not a switch exercise. It's not just you can decide to do it and then you can change it. You have to have a process. You have to have a journey of it. So it's a similar mindset across everything to make it more achievable.
Well, thank you so much, Pete. We could talk forever. Certainly now that we've got your face, we could definitely talk for much longer on the subject, but sadly,
probably not.
Has run out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to you. Thanks to everybody and their great questions.